I am a vegan journalist from Philadelphia. I've been writing off and on for the Daily News and Philly.com about Philly's vegan food scene since 2001. I also had a podcast called VegCast, which I'm now in the process of editing the last episode 123 of, and I'm very glad to be here as part of the Veggie Pride Parade. I'm honored to be here up on stage. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I do and kind of the way that it informs the way I look at the world. I do what I would call advocacy journalism, where I'm putting out information, reporting on vegan events, vegan food offerings, vegan restaurants opening, vegan trends, and so forth. That is the beat that I have, and because I'm in the middle of trying to get people to eat more vegan food, that perhaps makes me see that as an important form of activism. And there are people who will say, well, no, that's not activism. And I'm not here to argue activism or non-activism, but just to talk about how all of us really can engage in what I call food activism. Whatever other kind of work you do, whether you're vegan, whether you're vegetarian, whether you're not, whether you're a meat eater, any of that, you may be trying to cut down on the amount of meat and dairy you eat. That's great. Even greater, of course, is going vegan. But I would like to just start by saying, when people talk about vegan, there's sometimes a little bit of friction. There's infighting between different vegan constituencies saying, you know, this is the real veganism. If you're just eating vegan because you want to be healthier, or if you're eating plant-based because you want animal agriculture not to be destroying the planet as it is, then that's not really vegan. I would suggest that all of us try to embrace all the different ways people have of being vegan and working for a vegan world. And one of those has to do with eating fewer meat and dairy-based meals. So if any individual out there is cutting down on your consumption of meat and dairy, that's great. I would point out that if you make an ethical decision that you're not going to eat any more meat and dairy, it does actually have a great benefit in that it gives you a baseline that just a regular diet doesn't give you. If you're on a diet, you can cheat on a diet, and, you know, frankly, it's not going to make a huge bit of difference in the long run. Whereas if you say, I am simply going to avoid, insofar as possible, eating any animal products, then when you're sitting in the office and the donuts come in, and you're like, oh, I really shouldn't, but those look so good, you can just say, I know those are going to have dairy in them, so I don't have to worry about it. So it actually gives you a kind of I would even call it convenient. It gives you a level of convenience that you don't have if you're constantly trying to renegotiate your ethical stance or your dietary stance. So for me, having a commitment to be vegan is something that actually helps, and I encourage everybody to look into that. But whether or not you've gotten to that place, you may be leaning that way, I would just like to talk about food activism as a way of increasing the amount of vegan food available, the awareness of vegan food, the visibility of vegan food, and thereby decreasing the normalcy of the non-vegan culture that we live in. So, for example, if you're going and eating at vegan restaurants, if you have a vegan store, anytime that you have a vegan business that you can patronize, and I should mention Sullivan Street Press over there that publishes my books is a vegan business. Yes, waving right now. They're waving right now, now we've coordinated. But any vegan business, if you're putting money into vegans' pockets, that's great. The converse of that, and this is something that some people seem to have trouble with, is that if you're buying vegan food from non-vegans, then that's a problem because the money is eventually going to go to fund animal slaughter. I would encourage everybody to drop that whole dilemma, because anytime you give anybody any money, it's eventually going to get back into our system, and our system right now is a non-vegan system. So whether it's one step away, 2 steps away, or what, I would not say, you know, I'm not going to buy this product because it's owned by this company, which is owned by this company, and they did something that I don't like, so I'm not going to support this new vegan product they've put out. I mean, that's a fine stance if you want to take it, but I think that actually increasing the sales of vegan products and the awareness of vegan products is at bottom line, a good thing. Also, going into newly opened stores in your neighborhood, if they're food stores, if they're restaurants, if they're whatever, and asking about, oh, so do you have a vegan menu? Even if they have nothing vegan, just by asking, that's activism, because you're putting that question out there, you're raising the awareness that there is an expectation of having vegan food, and you're making it more normal that they should, whether they do or not. Now, if you go and you're at a regular restaurant, they have something vegan, you order something vegan, obviously, people will know what I'm talking about. There can be little problems sometimes with the staff that's not completely trained. They may say something's vegan when it's not. And some vegans are like, well, I don't want to make waves. I don't want to be that vegan. So I would say go ahead and be that vegan, as long as you're not being, snide or impolite, but be somebody who is acting out a commitment. Peter Singer has suggested that if you're at a restaurant eating with other people who are not vegan, and they bring out your dish and it has cheese on it, you should just go ahead and eat the cheese, because you don't want to be, you don't want to make your friends think, oh my God, these vegans. In my opinion, with all due respect to Peter Singer, I think that you should not eat the cheese if you're a vegan, because vegans don't eat cheese. And letting your friends know that that is something that is a baseline commitment that vegans actually have, I believe will do as much good as the lack of friction you would achieve by compromising your vegan ideals and eating the cheese. So, I mean, that may be difficult sometimes. The trick is to always be looking for the positive way to put things, to assume that the restaurant does want to help, does want to actually fulfill its promises, and not, just start venting at them, but try to help them to get to the point where the next person who comes in is not going to get a dish that's accidentally topped with cheese. Also, feeding vegan food to non-vegans is food activism. Now, that's maybe an event that you have, a public event. Even having your non-vegan friends over for a vegan meal is another way of getting more people to realize that vegan food can be delicious and that it is usually nutritious. Generally, promoting vegan foods as desirable in any public format. Now, down in Philadelphia, we have a tradition of cheesesteaks. I'm sure everybody's heard of the Philly cheesesteak. It's like when you think of Philadelphia, it's either the Liberty Bell or cheesesteaks. So I started the vegan cheesesteak contest in 2014, a contest to find the best vegan cheesesteak in the city. And we just had our 4th annual event. We had 29 different venues entering. We had a top 10 list of cheesesteaks that were all vegan, down to the vegan rolls. And that is expanding. I don't know if it's a cause and effect, but the number of vegan cheesesteaks in Philadelphia is on the rise, and I think that is something that, it, again, helps get that message across to the general public, whether they come to the cheesesteak contest enough. Just the concept that there can be a vegan cheesesteak, which of course is an oxymoron. The fact that you can have a cheesesteak with no cheese and no steak, and still have it be just as delicious, if not more so, is something that I think a lot of people are waking up to. And I'm going to just close with why I think that having people eat vegan food is important from an ethical standpoint. Some people say, you know, if people aren't eating vegan for the right reason, then they're not vegan, and it doesn't, you know, it doesn't count toward the great goal of veganism. But I want to cite a study that I've spoken about before, if you've ever seen me talk at Summerfest or other places, but this is one of my favorite studies, and I think it illustrates something very important. And in this study, which was, I always forget to bring this site, this is in the February 2012 issue of Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin. They took a group of meat eaters and divided them randomly into two groups. One group was told, after filling out this questionnaire, you will be eating a selection of fruit. The other group was told, after filling out this questionnaire, you'll be eating a selection of meat products. Then they had a questionnaire where they were evaluating the sentience, the suffering, the intelligence of different kinds of animals, and ranking them and saying, you know, what do you think this animal is, can this animal think, blah, 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 and basically just getting people's opinions on this. Now, remembering that all these people came into this study basically at the same point as meat eaters, it was very interesting that just based on being divided by what they were expecting to eat at the end of the questionnaire, there was a direct correspondence that those who thought they were going to have fruit, and they did get fruit, it wasn't a trick, those who knew that they were going to get fruit, rated animals' levels of intelligence and sentience higher consistently than those who expected to eat meat, as though the mere knowledge that you're about to eat meat forces the mind to start making adjustments that will justify your behavior. And I would just also like to point out that in terms of objective science, that what we actually know about animal sentience, the people who were eating fruit ranked animals much closer to that factual reality, whereas the people who were expecting to eat meat ranked them further off from fact. And so I would like to propose that eating meat and dairy actually interferes with our ability to think clearly. So the more we do to get vegan food in people's mouths and to get the animal body parts out of their mouths, the better job they are going to be able to do to think clearly about the ethical issues, even if when they're eating plant-based, they're not thinking vegan. The more that we get the concept of eating plant-based foods to be a normal, fun, and appealing thing for everybody, the better job we're going to be able to do of talking to people in a very factual way about what happens in the animal agriculture industry and having them see with a clearer vision that the answer to that is to not support that, and the key way that you stop supporting that is by stopping putting the residual effects of that on your plate. So that's been a large part of what I've been trying to do as a journalist, to get people thinking along those lines, but also to get people eating that way, which I believe will help them to think along those lines. So again, I would just like to say my two books that are here. One is a collection of my columns, my V for Veg columns from the Daily News. Covers a wide variety of topics that for the general reader that have to do with vegan trends and vegan eating and the vegan dining scene. Some Philly stuff, but mostly general. There's another book called Eating Vegan in Philly, and I know that a great many of you are going to pay a visit to Philadelphia at some time, and you're going to say, oh, I wonder where I should get the best vegan food. Well, I went and got answers to that from as many venues as I could fit in there, and got some of the best selections of vegan food grouped by neighborhood with the vegan restaurants first. And that book called Eating Vegan in Philly also has some of the history of the vegetarian and vegan movement in America, which I would like to point out, started down there in Philadelphia. That's right, New York, Philadelphia all the way. Although, all right, the American Vegetarian Society did start here in New York, so it's kind of, we have a kind of a balance there. If you're interested at all in that history or in knowing what you can eat when you go to Philadelphia, I hope you'll check out Eating Vegan in Philly, and I hope you'll check out V for Vegan on Philly.com. You can read that, you can get to that even now by simply typing into your browser philly.com/vegan-blog. And I hope, lastly, that you'll join me in enjoying some vegan food and helping your friends to enjoy that food in the hopes that they will also be able to think more clearly and to see that vegan day that we're all working towards. Thanks, everybody.